Welcome to World Talk with Friends, where the small world we live on becomes smaller as we discover neighborhoods all over the world by simply talking to our neighbors. This is Haggy Shack Radio production, simulcast over Wolf Spirit Radio Network. Colleen Kelly is producing with friends Nancy, Nora, Renata, Neil, and those we have yet to meet. Welcome to our world. And welcome to our world. This is Nancy Hopkins, and this is World Talk with Friends. We have three guests with us today, and I think you're going to find it to be a fascinating show. We have Colleen Kelly producing. This is over Wolf Spirit Radio Media, and the production company that's actually behind it is HaggyShack.com or Haggy Shack Radio. Nora is with me, Nora Willow. She's my co-host here, as is Colleen. And we also have Linda Morse, who we've had on Cosmic Reality Radio Show. And we have Jean Rockefeller, who's also been on the show. Very, very good friends. And we now have Yuroc, who is, I'm just meeting him. The girls have been with him for a while, and they're the ones that are going to really kind of propel, because I want them to tell how they got involved with him. He is, let me just give you a brief rundown, and I hope I've got this right because I kind of pulled it fast. Okay, Yuroc was given at birth the name Brian Chrissy, but later, Quechua, Quechua, shaman at Machu.
Quechua.
Say again, Brian. I'm sorry. Yuroc.
Quechua.
Okay.
Quechua.
And Machu Picchu named Yuroc, or spiritual man. So he was renamed Yuroc as a spiritual man by a shaman. At the age of 16, Brian and a friend had encountered a blue light special from somewhere else, and it changed him. Two others encountered it that next night. He at once understood that citizens of Earth are not being told everything they need to know. So he began a quest to find out and to share what we need to know. He was invited to the initial Star Knowledge Conference in 1996 at the Sioux Reservation in South Dakota, which was life-altering. They learned that indigenous people have been quietly interacting with off-planet intelligence for millennia, while SETI scientists have been fruitlessly listening for alien radio programs. They learned of the Hopi prophecy that talked of the shift from the competitive and decaying fourth world into the cooperative, love-based, and sustainable fifth world at about this time in history. One of the things that he got into was crop circle essences, and that's what we're going to focus on. He does so many things. He's a publisher. They've got a wonderful website out there. We'll get to give you all the information link-wise in the chat, just probably at the break. But what we're doing now is these crop circle essences, and Linda was the one who actually brought them to our attention, myself and Jean. So, Linda, I hate to start you out first, but you were the first one in this. So can you kind of explain to us, give us a summary of how you actually got involved with the essences and what they meant to you?
Sure. Well, I started making my own crop circle essences in 2011 with crop circle cards by Freddie Silva, and I didn't know why I was drawn to do this. I was already making flower essences, and I just kind of went with the guidance. And about 2 years after that, I had a friend who had given me a bunch of different essences that she had been gifted to, by somebody else, and I was going through them, and there was a group in there that I'd never heard of, and it was called Touch the Sky Cosmic Energy Essences. And I thought, geez, what could these be? So I looked it up on the internet, and I found the current developer of them was not made by hands. And so I contacted Yuroc, and we had a conversation, and I was just kind of blown away, because when I was given these, it just gave me another piece to the puzzle that I was not understanding. And at the same time, I knew that there was a reason, but I just didn't understand the reason. So it was just like a mosaic coming together. And I was so excited. And so I started ordering more of the essences from Yuroc, and I probably had 50 to begin with. And at one point, I had gotten a bunch of them from Yuroc. He'd had a sale on for his birthday one time last year, maybe the year before. And I was just so grateful to receive these. And I have probably 7 or 8 different groups of gem essences and flower essences that I work with, but most of the time, and I do this daily for myself, and then I give my husband a tincture so he doesn't have to sit with it daily, but I'll take them daily, and the crop circle essences are the ones that I call for almost every day. I mean, I call for at least one every day, and sometimes I'll call for other flower essences or gem essences, but it just seems to me that the crop circle essences have that potency that I'm ready to work with. And the thing that I find that they expand my world in the areas of synchronicity. And sometimes they are so amazing down to, and Nancy, I've heard you talk about this, about words and letters or symbols that will come up that are just repetitive all of a sudden, or bigger things in life that just seem to have these connections. And, I don't remember how I introduced you and Jean to them, but because of Jack's Corner and reading about Jack and Jean, Jean and I became friends, and I'd sent some to her as a gift just to introduce her to them. And I think that was the same with you, Nancy. So that's how I got involved with now not made by hand crop circle essences. And Yuroc is the creator of those essences.
Thank you for that very much. Yuroc, how did you kind of like stumble into, or be guided into, I should probably say, working with the essences? Can you give us like a little background in that? Turn your mic.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, just go for it. We'll tell you if not, we can't.
Okay. All right. The crop circle that really caught my attention was in about a week before the 9/11 events back in 2001. It was on a hill called Milk Hill in southern England, Wiltshire County. And I've been watching crop circles for some time. They're really puzzling and curious and all that. And I knew that the standard excuses, high school pranksters and, what, I mean, all of that was bogus. But there wasn't any getting past this particular one. It was the day before, it was not in the field. And it rained and thundered all night long and poured. In the morning, the clouds separated and the sun came out, and here is this formation 1,000 feet wide. It had 409 perfect circles in it, each one mathematically precisely where it should be. There were 6 big galactic arms, and each one was exactly right, and every piece of it was exactly like the other pieces on the other arms. And as you started looking at it and examining it, you find that the stalks in the field that were laid down were not broken like they would be with a board and ropes and things, but they were melted down. The stalks were bent, and these were brittle stalks. And there was no footprints, and there was no mud on top of the formation. And all of this and more of the story that I'm not going into right now really grabbed my attention. And at that point, I just intuited that this had to be this had to be an energetic process, that there was energy of some kind that was being used to create this. And some of the other folks that have been investigating crop circles have been studying other kinds of energy possibilities here, and they look at microwave, and they look at, various things that we know of, but none of them seem to have the right characteristics to explain this. So it seemed to me that this was probably being caused by an energy form that's not of the type that science normally examines. But I intuited at that point that if it is an energetic process, we should be able to take good, clean water into the energetic center of these formations and ask in a sacred way that the energies there that are beneficial for humans be remembered in that water for replication and distribution to those who can make use of it. And starting with that, I was in touch with Barbara Lamb, who is now retired from doing the crop circle tours that she has done for many years in the southern England area late in the summer. And I discussed it with her, and she immediately knew that this was exactly the right thing to do. And she's a master dowser. And this was really before I became more specifically a dowser. I was just very interested at that time. So I let Barbara Lamb determine the authenticity of the circles that she was taking people into and use her dowsing capabilities to find the energetic center, find the energetic edges of the pattern and the rest of that, and then meditate in a good way at the energy center until she knew or doused that the energy had been transferred and absorbed into the water. And then she would cap it and date it and set it aside and send it back to us at the end of the summer. And we started collecting these then after 2001. And at that time, the method was just that we waited for Barbara Lamb to find the right formations and prepare the original energies and get them back to us. And then we would say, wow, that's nice. And we'd wait for the next season. We didn't really know what to do with them. It was clear that they were powerful, but we had no particular idea as to what to do with them. You mentioned that my wife Pamela and I are publishers as well. And we were publishing a few years back a couple of books by Angel Rose O'Grady, who was a reader of the Akashic Records. And as we were working with her on that, at one point, it just became very clear to me that the thing that we should be doing is having Angel sample these various essences and then go into the Akashic Records with specific questions and then come back with the answers, and we would then know a little bit more about what to do with it. So we had her start doing that, and she has now decoded, I guess, around 170 of these, and we have a big binder that we're going to be publishing into a book of all this. Much of the information is at the notmadebyhands.com website, and so it's just been extraordinary, and every year gets better than the year before, and all kinds of interesting things have been happening just in the last year. But meanwhile, they are coming in at a rapid pace, and they're usually about right now they're coming in about the one significant formation about every third day or so. And now that we have determined how to extract the energies without physically having to buy a ticket to go to England and sit in the grass, we're able to keep up with the incoming formations and using guidance to help us select the ones that are worthy of taking energies. So that's a brief tour of how we got. Excuse
me, how are you doing that without having somebody right there on the on the ground with it? How are you getting the energies? Okay. Can you explain that, please?
All right. Yes. The story that best exemplifies that starts in late summer 2014, and we had been noticing, in the previous years, like 2001, 2, 3, up through just maybe 2-3 years ago, almost all of the crop circle formations that were significantly interesting, that is, beautiful and precise and having the kind of characteristics that I was talking about, almost all of those were in Wiltshire County, southern England, or in any case not too far from Stonehenge. And most of them, or a lot of them, are close to sacred sites and this sort of thing. So there was something that we hadn't totally understood about the sacred sites of ancient England And I was getting into dowsing in those years as well, which is a whole other wonderful topic. And what we found was that just in the last 2 or 3 years, some of the really interesting and spectacularly mathematically precise high-energy formations are not in southern England anymore. They are branching out. There's a beautiful one in Italy not long ago. They show up in Germany and in Holland and other places around the world. And our guess at this point as to why that is happening and how it's possible is that there's a energy grid that I think we are all familiar with one way or another that is part of the Earth, and it carries these subtle metaphysical energies through energy rivers in the sky and in the ground, and they're called different things. Some people call them the ley lines, and then there's Hartmann lines and Curie lines and all manner of things. But it creates a grid around the Earth, and the control center seems to be at Stonehenge. And so our interpretation is that the reason that a lot of these formations were coming in not far from Stonehenge was that whatever the meaning of this, these are clues, but they're also inoculations of energy signatures that the Earth needs and that sort of thing. Whatever is coming in from our benevolent friends in past years seem to be coming in close to Stonehenge so that those energies could pass through the Earth grid and replicate through the world and help balance and elevate the sensibilities of this planet. And so how are they showing up in Bavaria and Italy and other places like that? Well, our contention here is that because of the efforts of people like you and us and others who know that there's important things going on, that we must illuminate the Earth, we must raise the energies and all of this, that this is actually having some impact. And I think what is happening is that the energy intensities and depths that are passing through the energy grid are getting increasingly strong. And they are strong enough, far enough from Stonehenge to support the creation of these extraordinary formations at a greater distance. And that's all a hypothesis. You can't prove anything, but that's where we're coming out. But anyway, getting back to the end of the season in 2004, Barbara Lamb was in England, and we had some other people in England going around and tracking the formations and collecting the energies and all that. And then this most beautiful formation shows up in the mountains of Bavaria in southern Germany. And it was so beautiful and so precise and all the things that you would expect, but it wasn't in southern England. So Barbara Lamb couldn't get there, and the people we had out in the field there couldn't get there. And so we thought, well, what else could we do? So we searched through our records. We found a couple in Hamburg, Germany, who were working with some of our essences. I got in touch with them, and I asked them, say, this is your country. Do you think you'd be able to pop down to Bavaria? It's only on the other side of your little country there, and maybe pick up some of this energy. And their response was, well, we would certainly love to. However, it is late Friday afternoon, and there's 4 kids involved, and school starts on Monday, and it's an 8.5-hour drive one way. We're not going to make it. Certainly love to, though. And so we kind of left it at that. And then Petra, the wife, came back to me and said, wait a minute, I'm getting some guidance here. I'm a Reiki 2 master, and I do healing at a distance. I push health energies out across. I can do anywhere in the world. I push energies out to help people. And there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to turn that around and pull energies back remotely. And I said, well, that's a very interesting thing. Why don't you do that? And so she took the pattern, and being an artist as well, she's an amazing person, artist and singer and composer and poet, and goes on and on. In any case, she took a stone base and then reproduced the pattern from the Bavarian formation on there. And all of these essences typically start with water that comes from the White Well at Glastonbury, the Chalice Well, because we wanted to have water that was not already carrying memories of whatever, passing through the sewers of Cleveland or something. Who knows what you're going to get out of the tap. But we got the water coming out of the Chalice Well. And so that was kind of a limitation. I said, well, usually we make these essences out of the Chalice Well water. And Petra said, well, curious thing, we just have a bottle of it right here. They were over there earlier in the summer, and they'd brought back this bottle of the Chalice Well water, and so they started with that. They put the Chalice Well water in the basin. They went through a kind of a sacred meditation thing and opened up the channels and did the Reiki 2 and reversed the direction and pulled energy from Bavaria to Hamburg into that water, and went through the same kind of thing that Barbara Lamb would do in person. And she then would get to the point where she felt, I think we have the water here. And so she took half the water and shipped it to me and kept half the water in case the mails failed. We always have to do that sort of thing. So we got the water back at this end. It was it charged up very nicely. It had some. We can talk about that later when we measure these things, but it was a high charged essence. And then I heard another thing from Petra, and she said, we're just thinking, we know a couple down in Bavaria, and they're friends of ours, and I'm going to ask them if they could possibly go down and get some of the water directly. And so she got in touch with them, and they were right there. And they said, sure, I'd love to do that. Tell us what to do. And so Petra instructed them, and they went to the site. And this is one of the blessings on the farmer of that particular field. He knew enough to say, this is an important thing. We're going to preserve this. We're going to allow people to have access to it. And just, don't trump on my crops, and be careful and respectful. But yeah, sure, come on. So they went in and they found the formation. They found the energy center. They took good water from a spring into the center of the formation. They went through a meditative invocation, brought energy in until they felt it was done. They capped the bottle and did the same thing, kept tap and sent it after me. And then I had two versions of the water from the same place, and that gave us an interesting opportunity because I could put both energies, both waters on the table, and take them through the same process of measuring, and they were identical.
Why don't you take us through that process?
They had the same energy signature.
Can you take us through that?
Okay. I can. We have to do just a few ground level understandings of what dowsing is. And dowsing, the first thing that people think of is, oh, you're going to tell me where to drill for water. Well, I get my water out of the tap. I don't need you. Well, that's one kind of dowsing. It's a traditional kind of dowsing. But what has happened in the last couple of years is the definition of dowsing has expanded a great deal. And what you find is that a lot of people will say, no, I'm not a dowser, I use kinesiology. Well, that's dowsing. I'm not a dowser, I use muscle testing. No, that's dowsing. I'm not a dowser, I use body, I'm intuitive. They're all dowsing. It's all dowsing. What is dowsing? Well, what Petra was doing between Hamburg and Bavaria was dowsing as well. What dowsing turns out to be is a two-way street between our physical and metaphysical worlds. And most people think of it as an incoming kind of thing, where you're getting visible evidence in the 3D world of unseen truth in the metaphysical world. And that's the traditional approach. That's how you find water wells and things. But what Petra was doing, and others in Reiki 2 and distance healing and various things like that, it's using the same kinds of connections, but the energy is passing through intention across what we call the quantum edge of the metaphysical world, where there is the morphogenic field, which is impacted by our intentions, and coordinated intentions by people have major impacts on the far side there. The probability fields in the morphogenic field are changed by our collective intentions, and then what manifests back here in our 3D world is a result of the most probable probability outcomes from the morphogenic field on the far side of the quantum edge. So it's a two-way street. So you can extract information and you can push information back across. So if you go back traditionally and you say, well, how do you work with dowsing? And the simplest thing is, and you can do it with a nut on a string or anything that you want, although some are much more reliable than others. But you choose some tool, and you don't even have to have a tool. Eventually you find out that your intuition is your tool, and you start tuning into how that feels when you have a hunch that turns out to be right. That inner knowing, that's really what it is. The tools are ultimately kind of a crutch. It's fun to see the visual result of this, but you don't need it really. But in any case, you can pull information and you can push intentions. It's all the same channels and same kind of energies. So to go back in history, back in probably late 1800s in France, there was a researcher who was a dowser and doing stuff, and at one point he wondered whether we couldn't be just a little bit more quantitative about this, because it's nice to get yeses and nos, but can't you do a little better than that? So he started developing scales that can be put flat on the table. When you take your dowsing pendulum, for example, you hold it over that scale. Then you ask your specific question, and you're in the right space, you're not distracted and all this stuff. You get your ego out of the way and all the stuff you have to do. And you start, I don't think I'm going to work with that. Okay, somebody else. I'm sorry. So you work with these charts, and you start getting more than just yeses and nos. You start getting, for example, one chart might go from 0 to 100%, and you can ask things like, how reliable is this pendulum on a scale from 0 to 100%? You can get the best pendulum. You can ask about what's the truth reliability on a scale from 0 to 100% of what Donald Trump just said. Well, you can do this kind of stuff. You can't prove anything. But these charts started to evolve, and it rapidly gets into topics like emotion code and so on. It's all dowsing. It's all done with charts. It's all really the same thing. But getting back to how we measure these essences, these charts in American pronunciation are called Bovis charts, B-O-V-I-S. His French name is probably Bovie, but we say Bovis. And so there's a lot of these. And the traditional charts go in odd increments. The standard one goes from 0 to 14,000 Bovis or 14 kilobovis. The next one goes from 0 to 36 kilobovis. And then if you fall off the scale there, you add zeros at the ends of the numbers. So instead of going from 0 to 36, you go from 0 to 360, or maybe 0 to 3,600, and so da-da-da. Well, I was teaching. We have a group here. Lindy is part of that group. We meet usually at least monthly on Skype, and we work with some of these essences and things. And one of the members of the group at one point just said, this is really kind of a chaotic way to measure these things. Why don't you measure the thing in two steps? And instead of adding all these zeros and these odd numbers like 360 and all that, why don't you just go from 0 to 1,000 and find out which scale to be on as the first part of the dowsing, and then once you're on the right scale, 0 to 1,000 on that scale, the second thing, get two dowsing measurements, and you've got the answer instead of going through all these multiple charts just because they're traditional. So we developed our own scale for doing that, and it's a good thing that we did because with that particular one that I'm talking about, which is called the Orem formation, which was in southern Germany. That one, eventually, when we measured it out, was in the megabovis range, 1.8 megabovis. This is like megabytes, but it's megabovis. So it's instead of kilobovis, which is the unit that's best for measuring energies in the human body and the aura field and that sort of thing, we're talking one step up from there in the millions of bovis. So it was nearly 2 million bovis in that particular formation, and we got that same reading from both of these energies. The one that was done remotely into Hamburg and the one that was done directly in Bavaria. Both of them clocked in at 1.8 megabovis, and that was August 10th, 2014. And in the period since then, we have observed a process where the energy intensity in many of these formations is stepping up in an extraordinary way. And we quickly were moving out of the megabovis and into the gigabovis range. And then we're moving up into the terabovis range. And now we've got a few up in the petabovis range. These are like quadrillions of bovis. Some of these are measuring. And we don't yet fully understand what that means. It's some kind of intensity. But these subtle energies that dominate the far side of the quantum edge, we believe are going to have aspects that are correlated with the kinds of energy aspects that we see in our 3D world. So if you look at electricity or sound, for example, with sound you've got amplitude and vibration. Well, you're going to have a similar thing with these subtle energies, whatever you call them on the far side. They're going to have something like amplitude, and I think that's what we're measuring here on the bovis scale. And you're going to have something that's like vibration. And what we find is that these formations do not correspond to like a tuning fork, which is a middle C and it's as loud as you strike it. I mean, that's a very simple thing. That's one vibration and one amplitude. But they're more like a symphony of all manner of different things. And once you realize that, you know, you really can't understand very much from the intensity. It's like how loud was the orchestra? Well, that's an interesting measure. Bigger orchestras are louder maybe and that sort of thing, but it doesn't really tell you very much. There's another dimension, at least another dimension in the vibrational area, and each of these formations has a complex signature in the vibrational dimension as well. And
so if I'm
playing with that. And,
Brian, if I understand you, what you're saying is that the new crop circles, the ones that are more current, seem to be more, let's say, just say energetic. They're putting off a greater energetic.
That's right.
Okay. Now, have you tested the old
That's
ones?
right.
Have you tested the old ones to see if they have changed also? In other words, could it be that?
Only so many people.
Okay, but it's just an interesting concept that, you know, because
we do that. Yeah.
Just throwing that out to you, you know, that it could be a reflection that
we do that from time to time.
Yeah. Go on. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just kept focusing on the old ones, thinking, I wonder what's happening with them. Maybe Jean and Linda will be able to, you know, detect that too, if they look for it. Has it changed?
We would invite all our. Yeah. Well, we do see some changes. And one of the things we have to look at some point is the extent to which these energies may influence each other because they get stored in the same area and they emanate, and we can intend that they don't affect each other, but it's probably impossible to prevent their working with each other. And they do seem to have personalities. They seem to select themselves for different people, for different purposes. And it's a marvelous thing to see, but I would not be surprised if when we go back and do all those remeasurements that we will find that the longer they've been around the others, the higher their intrinsic energy gets. And the other thing that we notice from them is that they are more or less homeopathic in the sense that if you take one essence and you inquire, you ask whether you say, would it be all right if I add a little bit more of this fine water here, and you get a positive response. And so you mix it with some more clear, unadulterated water, and you get more than you had before. And what you'll find then, if you go back and measure, is that the energy intensity is the same. You've just got more of it. So each one of them is like a lifetime supply, as long as you deal with it with respect and treat it like a friend and work with it as you need to. So nobody needs to run out of them. They just become friends. What may happen sometimes is that you outgrow your need for a particular one. It'll just get to the point where you've done that, you've updated your energy signature, you no longer have that deficiency, and that particular essence may not really give you much anymore after you've already accommodated yourself to it. So we see that sort of thing happen too.
Okay, this is so fascinating. We don't have enough show to cover all this. But what I'd like to do right now, because what my question I was going to pose to you is, well, what do people do with this? But we've got two people who have been working with it, so maybe we'll give you a break here, and we can. I'm going to go back to Linda for a minute because, she's been at it a little bit more, so maybe she's got more to say explaining, what she's used. So, Linda, how do you feel about that? Can you just tell people how you use the essences?
Well, I muscle test or douse every day for myself, and I'll do that same sort of thing when I'm working with other people. And the dowsing over the years has just taught me to trust that. So I don't really question it. I'll just go with it. And for me, I think for most people it's like one drop, or some of the instructions in a number of the essences say don't use any more than one drop, or don't even use it right now because it's too strong. And there was one called Tepe, T-E-P-E, and it said don't even use this, just hold it. Well, I was like, okay, just hold it, but I'm getting to take it. And so I just followed that instruction. And when we had our Skype meeting for the Not Made by Hands group, I asked Angel about that, and as if you remember what Yuroc was saying, she is the one that reads the Akashic records for the essences. And she said, yes, it has changed. It's okay to take it. And what I call for on most of the essences is I'll call for 4 drops. So I take 4 drops. I know other people can take just one. And when I test them, there was one that I just was testing for a period of time, and like every other week I would get it. And I was like, this is kind of interesting, or I might get it 3 days in a row. And I didn't really understand. I mean, I could read the description. It was called Benevolence and Wisdom. And it talked about the energies of another solar system passing through ours. And about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I happened to listen to an Alex Collier interview where he was talking about the planet X and Nibiru, and he said it actually has its own solar system, and it's sitting outside of our planet behind the sun. And it was like, holy moly, that's the answer. So I discover over time that they reveal to me, I don't always get instant experiences with them, but I discover over time they reveal different mysteries that I might be questioning, or I might have a query about that has been standing. And so that's the exciting thing for me, because they really, for me, I just trust that they lead me down a particular path, and I will put them in our garden. I'll put them in water. I'll put them on the plants, and, I always douse to find out, that sort of thing. And my husband and I try to, we get away, usually 2 or 3 months out of a year. And we will take our boat, which is a trawler, and we will go on the ocean, and it's been really interesting to see. I'll always ask, is there an essence, or is there a group of essences that would benefit the ocean waters, or benefit by if I'm dropping it in where we're anchored out, which normally we are at an anchor somewhere. And, the last one I got was Holy Canuga, and it had to do with water. And it's uncanny how, when I'm not even asking, does it have anything to do with water, because energetically it could be dropped in the water, and that energy could, swim ashore. It could come ashore with the waves, or it could be benefiting the wildlife under the ocean. And I have no idea. I just will ask, and sure enough, the Holy Canuga had to do with making the waters more pristine over time and creating this better way. So I would just drop it, at each anchorage I would take that, and so that's how I use it. And I will, similar to when I was using the Crop Circle Essence cards, I would be instructed, and I would ask, is there anything else that this garden needs? And I'd get yes. And it was like, okay. So similar to what Yuroc was saying, you let your intuition guide you. And if there is some thought that comes up, then I get to douse on that and find out, is that just my mind working, or is it really the instruction that I should be following? And so I find different ways. Sometimes I'll put them in misters, and I'll mist around the house in the corners or around the property, or I put them in the hummingbird feeder water. So it could be, you just don't let your mind stop with any kind of imagination that, if there's an idea that comes up, I just run with it.
Well, there was also that big thing when the Gold King mine explosion happened, and it was threatening 3 states. And you got in contact with Jean, and then Jean got in contact with myself and Walt and I did some things, but then we asked you if you would throw one of our energy devices into the water, because you were right there on the river. And at that time you also added the essences. Do you remember what you were thinking when you did that?
Well, I actually asked, what should go in the water as well. And the original thing that went in the water was one of the organite pieces that Jean made with her instruction of Jack, her watch your horse. And after putting that in, it was like, okay, then putting in the shungite turtle Tesla water was called for, and honest to goodness, there was another one, and I can't remember which one it was. That was last August, which seems like years ago.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, and but that was, and Tesla water is a really interesting one. I think it was one of the first ones that was made out of the crop circle that Yuroc was talking about, the formation, like the, was that the Julia set, Yuroc? I think you're
That was the first one that was talking, the 2001 late summer, right before 9/11 formation, and originally it was called the Global Healing Mandala and Global Healing Water, and then there was a lucid dream that I was a part of, and Nikola Tesla came in and gave us permission to use his name on it. He said he was using it in a good way on the other side, and that we were fine to put his name on it. And he's been involved with another essence or two since then as well, along with some other departed masters. So yeah, the interesting thing about that particular, many interesting things, but the part that really caught my attention when we made that first one was that most of your listeners will probably recognize that Milk Hill formation from 2001. It looks like a galaxy, and it's got 6 arms, and it's just beautiful and everything. And we, as a species on this planet, had a great opportunity to open the door to communication with the off-planet friends. But instead, we flew planes into buildings and had 12 years of chaos and war and invasion of countries, and that's what we did instead. But we could have done something really interesting. What we did do when we made this water, if your listeners remember, this galaxy swirls. It looks like it swirls in a counterclockwise direction. And so the water that was energized by that formation, if you have a dowsing tool and you're in a good mode and everything, you hold your dowsing pendulum over a bottle of this, it will pick up that same counterclockwise spin. And if you take a single drop of that, Tesla water, and put it into another bottle and hold your dowsing pendulum over that one spins up. It replicates this spinning process. And we found that we have a stream below our house, and we could go upstream a quarter of a mile or something and put a drop in, and then go running downstream and sit by the stream with our pendulums over the water. And as soon as the water upstream came down, the pendulum would start spinning. And this meant something to us, and we started putting drops of water like that in various bodies of water. And it seems to have a clarifying, cleansing, uplifting kind of effect on the water. So it's no surprise that would be one of those that Lindy found and indicated that wanted to be in those messed up waters there in Colorado. So at last count, we had people in 36 nations that were putting Tesla water into surface waters. And all of that mixes up that we are the water people. This is the water planet. It's all about water. And this is one of the major things that we have available to enhance the energies of the water here and try to clear up some of the damage that our species has done to it.
Well, it was amazing to see how within 3 days between the Tesla water and the other essence, but I think so much of they were all synergistically working together. The shungite turtle. The water started clearing up, and I remember, even a couple of weeks after that, the water was clearing up, but how if there's a stream that's coming down and there's rocks in there, you'll find sediment kind of behind the rock where the water is not being activated as much. It's not pushed like right against the water in the front, so it kind of collects behind in the shadow of the rock, and I was noticing there was still a little bit of the orange color from this spill in the water. And I'll tell you, within 1 day, just of like looking at that and saying, all right, you guys, do your work. Come on, we got to step this up again. And I noticed that there was actually a change because I would ride my bike along the river. And within another day, it was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing that it's actually cleared. And just to report, the water is looking really, really good right now. So I think, I can't see those things. I know that people have that other kind of vision to be able to see a deeper vision, and yet it's just remarkable to see the outcome. And it makes me very excited and very happy to be able to play that way and participate in that kind of mystical.
Well, it was world changing, because for those people that don't really know what we're talking about, you probably do, but you don't want to think about it because it was so awful. They were trying to clean out a mine in Colorado, and they were using water pressure in order to do it. Now, they had been warned that the rock structure wouldn't hold this pressure, but they ignored them, and this is your corporation in control of the United States. And so they blew the rock open, and out came millions and millions of tons of just the most polluted stuff you can imagine, so that the rivers were running this terrible orange, right, Linda? It was just awful. And it was feeding into the Colorado River, which then would essentially destroy the basic water structure of 3 states. This is how dangerous it was. And it wasn't just, in my opinion, it wasn't just what Linda did. It wouldn't have happened without Linda. It wouldn't have happened without Yuroc and his essences. But there was also a huge upsurge of thought energy going, no, we're not going to let this happen.
Right.
That fueled everything. Nothing that we could have done independently without everybody else would have worked. You know what I'm saying? In my opinion. So, but it all worked. And for that, we have to kind of like be so grateful that we may have missed the 2012 portal. I think that we just weren't ready for it, and it was like, okay, missed that station, but the next one's coming up. Because to be able to do what we're doing is going to take an extraordinary amount of unity and understanding and togetherness. So, hopefully that's what's happening. I mean, that to me, that is what's happening. Now Jean's had some really extraordinary, experiences with the essences, but we're getting towards the top of the hour, so why don't, Colleen, if you're there, why don't we, just have a break a little early, and then when we come back, we'll have Jean tell her stories about her experiences with it. Okay?
All righty.
All right, we'll be right back. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All righty, we are back.
Thank you, Colleen. This is the World Talk with Friends, and I'm Nancy Hopkins. Colleen Kelly is producing. We have Jean Rockefeller with us, Linda Morse, and Yuroc, and we are talking about crop circle essences. This is a donation-supported operation. Both HaggieShack.com and WolfSpiritRadio.com will take your money as a donation, or you can become a member for $5 a month and download any of the archives. And also, every show for a week after they show live is in a free archive. So you can just go to the archive button at the top of the any of the stations, and you can then do that. Download it for free for a week. Okay. All right. Nora had to leave us. Bummer, but she'll be back maybe if she had a little thingy problem, that she had to take care of. Anyway, okay, Yuroc, I'm gonna ask Jean if she's back. Jean, are you there, hon?
Yes, I am.
Okay, excellent. Because you tell your story, please, because it's fascinating about your experiences with the essences, if you would, please.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I really believe that they have a consciousness. And that's something that I've actually had conversations with the consciousness of the essences. And I think for me personally, what they've done is they've allowed me to view myself as an expansive and limitless being. So it takes you out of the constraints of the ego and lifts you up into these incredible lofty heights where you can actually witness and experience what you're capable of, which is just absolutely the experiences that I've had with the essences have just been absolutely mind-blowing. And I find that once I get quote unquote attuned to them, I no longer need them. So Linda has sent me quite a few, and I find that I don't need to use them more than once or twice. And after that, I've absorbed their energy, I've acclimated to it, and then I can try another essence. But they've really just been such an incredible adjunct to everything else that I do. And I find also that my animals have asked for them. My horses asked for them. There was one time Linda sent me one, and very specifically Jack wanted this essence. And when you go on the website, it's a little, at least for me, it's a little overwhelming because there's so many and I want every single one of them. So I just kind of deferred to Linda and I said, Linda, just send me what you think that I need. And she's always spot on with what she sent me. And there was one essence, like I said, that Jack wanted, and I forgot it. And I was heading to the barn, and I got about a half a mile, and I kept on hearing, nope, you have to go back and get it. You have to go back and get it. So I went back, and I got the essence, and when I got to the barn, Jack was nudging me. He's like, did you bring it? Did you bring it? And I put it in his water, and he immediately went into this a trance. I can tell when he goes in, when he starts working with energy. It's very obvious. And so I know that my animals, not only have I benefited, but my animals have benefited tremendously from them. They're just, I just can't say enough good things about them. And the other thing that Linda also, I think she mentioned this, that they increase, synchronicities, which is, little kind of miracle things that happen. And it's just, it just validates for me even more just how special they really are.
Well, okay, when you were working with them, the sentient being that you think you're connecting, I know you're connecting with, but the sentient being, is it still associated with the crop circle, or is the crop circle like a vehicle, a symbolic vehicle that gives the energy so that it's kind of independent from the crop circle? Or do you feel that it's still locked into the energy of that crop circle?
No, it seems to be that all the essences have a consciousness that oversees them. So it's not just an individual consciousness. It's an individual consciousness that is like an umbrella over all of the crop circles. Does that make sense?
Yes. Do you feel that is what I'm getting at? Is that when I was looking at the crop circles, I asked the question. If you ask a question, you will get an answer. And the question was, what's doing this? And this response was immediate, that it was actually the planet herself, Gaia herself, the consciousness of the planet was using energy signatures to imprint on the 3D reality, and that those signatures themselves, it wasn't so much that out-of-towners were putting it down to help the planet. I think the planet was doing it herself to help human beings go through the changing.
Well, I also think that once and maybe Yuroc could agree or disagree with this, but I think that once the crop circle has been created on the earth, that energy signature actually goes into the earth. Oh, he did speak about this. It actually penetrates into the earth. So not only is Yuroc, quote unquote, bottling the essences so that they can be shared among humanity and animals and plants and so forth, but Gaia herself is also getting the energy signatures of the crop circle directly when it's created.
So it's sort of like you have these individuals, but they're all part of one.
At least that's my interpretation, yes.
Like we are. We're individuals, but we're all part of one.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, oneness is the big thing. Oneness is the theme of all of it. And we are one with the essences, we're one with the formations, we're one with all living beings on planet and off planet, spirit and physical. The energy, the idea of oneness continues to come every time. It's in all of the essences. And I think it's the ultimate answer. I mean, once you get into oneness, then dichotomy and division and anger and hostility and war, all that stuff falls away. I mean, why would you hurt yourself, by hurting somebody else when you're one with the other person? I mean, it's such an obvious lesson, and it's throughout all these essences.
Now, Jean,
other thing I was going to mention,
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that the other curious little thing, we go back to that Tesla water. Not only does it replicate itself and clarify the water and everything, but it has a very interesting and useful aspect to it, and that is that it keeps water fresh. And a particular application of that is in the hot tubs. And we've been running a hot tub for over 3 years now without any chemicals at all in it. The only thing we put in it is a drop of the Tesla water. And we get the pendulum out and it spins up. And as long as, ever since we did the first drop, it's just continuing to spin and it stays clean. There's no scum. There's no necessity to buy hundreds of dollars of chemicals. I mean, that whole process is like walking on a knife edge with the knife edge up. You know, you could slip off on either side if you get too much of this or too little of that. Suddenly you've got green water and scum along the edge and all kinds of stuff. Well, none of that happens. It just stays nice and clean and clear, and we have a good time with it. So it's a wonderful thing. You just but you can't go into the local spa store and say, I've got a new thing here. You sell people this thing, it's only a few dollars, and then they won't have to buy any of your hundreds of dollars of chemicals every month. How about that? Well, of course, they wouldn't be interested in that. So it's not like you could really sell it to anybody that talks to people that have spas and hot tubs and such. But it's just an interesting side effect. We keep finding interesting things with a lot of these. And we did any of you or your listeners see that alien head that came down last week? Looked like a Zeta, big black eye type, big head, alien face that came down a crop circle.
No.
I don't know if you did or not, but it's oh yeah, yeah. I mean, just look for it on cropcircleconnector.com or just look for it. It's another beautiful one. The head is clearly classically the type that is commonly associated with the Zetas or the Greys. And then around it are 14 feathers, and each of the feathers has 7 spines, and it's all about 7s and 14s. And it's high energy and beautiful. Of course, hoaxers would say, well, that's an easy design to make, so it's got to be a hoax. But it seems to us that if you can extract usable energy and meaning from these things, it really doesn't matter, whether a human was involved in making it or not. I think it's authentic. That's what the dowsing suggests. But there is another aspect of some of this. We humans tend to, talk about oneness, we tend to be not in oneness in the sense that, well, if you're not conservative, then you're liberal. If you're not left, then you're right. If you're not white, then you're black. If you're not X, then you're Y. Everything's got to go into a box. And if you're not in this box, you must be in the other box. And this excluded middle is a part of this. And we see this a lot. And with the crop circles, I mean, sometimes humans are involved making these, and they've been seen doing it. Doesn't mean they do all of them. They don't. But they can make some that are kind of interesting. And so as humans, we tend to say, oh, look, a human is involved, therefore it's a false one. It's a hoax. It's either a hoax or it's not. Those are the boxes. But we find that there's a third box, which is very interesting, and we call them hybrids. And the one that comes to mind, the first one that we had direct experience with, we were in the fields of England looking at the different crop circles with Barbara Lamb a couple of years ago, and she had us go to this one formation, and she knew the story about it, and we didn't, and so she had us do the dowsing, and I figured pick up energy from it anyway, and even if it was a hoax, it'd be interesting to see what kind of energy we get from that. And it's a good thing that we did that, because there was some significant energy there, and yet when she told the story, it was clear that it was actually made in the grass by human beings. And the story was that there was a fellow who was a paraplegic. He was in a wheelchair. He couldn't really make it out to the fields, but sometimes people with those kinds of disabilities have the ability to sit around and be in touch with who knows what in ways that the rest of us can only guess at. In any case, one night he has this lucid dream, and this image appears to him, and along with it, kind of a compulsion to make this formation somewhere. And so he asked some of his friends to help him with this, and they got together, they practiced a few places, and they got driven out of one farmer's field, and they finally got the okay to do their thing in this one field, and they got together, and they planned it all out, and they tramped out the pattern and everything. It was a little rough, but still, reasonable attempt. And this was the one that we came across. And so we got the energy and all that. We did the reading of it. And through the Akashic readings, what became clear was that this was coordinated by off-planet beings. It wasn't created in the same way, but it was created indirectly. The off-planet beings were instructing this paraplegic fellow to carry this out. They gave him the image. He carried the image out and had it created in the field. And many times the energy comes not by virtue of what alien race made it or whatever, but rather the sacred geometry of the design. There's energy in the design of it, the angles that are used, and the numbers of things that are involved, and so on. And there was some significant energy there. In the reading that we had from it was this was a formation whose energy was intending to help humans work with the visitors to achieve high things of common interest. And so it was a coordination thing of some kind. So I just go through that whole story to advise us whenever we can is to stay back in oneness, to avoid this tendency that we humans have to put things in one box or the other of only two boxes and make any sense of that. It's not like that. It's much more varied than that.
Jean, did you feel like?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you want to tell the story about Antarctica? Huh?
Oh wow, Nancy, that's a long one. How about if I tell another story, because you were involved in this one too?
Oh, okay.
Okay,
whatever you feel good with.
Okay, so I went to go see my horse, and he wanted me to bring there's an essence called digestive essence, and Linda's also involved in this as well. And you called me when I got to the barn, and I gave the essence to Jack, and he started doing his thing, and you and I were on the phone conversating, and then I got a text from Linda later that day saying how sick she was. And I thought it was very interesting. I mean, to me, there was no coincidence that I gave Jack the digestive essence and Linda was having digestive symptoms. So she didn't have a very pleasant day that day, but there obviously was some kind of connection between the essence, my horse, and what Linda was experiencing. So maybe Linda could share what she experienced.
Well, would you like detail? Actually, I'd gotten, like I had a bout of vertigo. It was so strong and intense, I kept throwing up. And, of course, I had to lay down. But I just wondered, I don't even remember, I think somehow you and I connected, Jean, and maybe you had suggested that
the digestive essence was really working for Jack, and he was having issues. And I thought, golly, what time did that happen? Because I just all of a sudden this came out of nowhere. And we all thought there must be some kind of connection with it. So yeah, it wasn't a pretty experience. And oftentimes that'll last with me for 2 or 3 days. And it was pretty much, even though my mind was not real clear for a couple of days, I was able to get up and get around just fine the next day. So it was kind of just a spot on experience.
And Jean, when Linda son, when you were on the phone with me, Jack almost fell over a couple of times. Remember?
Yeah, and that's how I know he's doing energy work, because he normally when a horse can sleep standing up, but when there's a mechanism called the stay apparatus. And when Jack is doing energy work, he doesn't engage his stay apparatus. So the stay apparatus is this complicated thing that occurs so their legs can lock in place. So it's a musculoskeletal thing where their legs can lock in place so they can get a restful sleep when they stand up. So when he starts doing energy work, his head drops to the ground, and his stay apparatus doesn't engage, and he starts almost falling over. So that's how I can tell he's doing energy work. And as soon as I dropped the essence into his water bucket, he went right over to the bucket. He didn't drink any of the water. He just had his head right over the bucket, and he immediately went into this trance and started doing work. And then when, you and I were on the phone, and I wasn't sure what was going on, because I wasn't really getting any communication from him, but I knew that something was happening, and I knew that you and I had to stay on the phone. And then when, Linda and I spoke later, and she told me that she had this, not horrific, but unpleasant day with these digestive symptoms, and that it all occurred right at about the same time. I thought that was very, very interesting.
Well, now that you're saying that, Jean, I'm remembering more of the detail, because I had felt a little lightheaded, and I thought, I'm fine. I'm going to go out and run some errands. Well, I got to one store, and I was like, whoa, maybe I better get home. And I thought, no, I'm okay. I'm going to go to one more store. And I got to this market, and I got so dizzy I couldn't even stand up. And there was a woman there I was so grateful for. She said, "Can I help you?" And they see me in here all the time. She said, "Are you okay? Can I help you?" And I said, "I need a chair. I can't stand up." So when I heard about what was going on with Jack, it was like, there's got to be some more than connection here, because I could just barely make it home. I sat down at the store for about 15 or 20 minutes, and she brought me water, and I thought, okay, I'm good enough to get home. And as soon as I got home, it was like all hell broke loose.
Well, one of the things that Jean pointed out to me about the situation is that a horse really can't throw up. That even if they're having gastro problems, so it might have been the person that was standing in for him. Wasn't that what you said, Jean?
Yeah, and that's the feeling that I had, that Linda was kind of acting as a physical proxy, because like you said, horses they can't bring anything up from their stomach, they can't throw up. So he needed some kind of release, and somehow, they may have had, the other thing that I got was that it wasn't just that Linda was acting as a proxy for Jack, it was that they had things together that they could support each other in releasing. So, he was helping her, and she was helping him. It was a very synergistic experience.
Well, thank you for that little added detail, because I wasn't aware of that part, but it makes complete sense.
Yuroc, would you like to comment on this? Is this the type of thing that you see often or hear about, or do you have other anecdotal kind of messages from people who have had other experiences? And are you muted?
Yes. I am not muted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
You should be able to hear me now. All right.
We can hear you.
There there are too many to relate. We've got 170 of them now, and pretty much each one has several stories of people whose lives were positively impacted by it. And the sense that we get is, well, it kind of reminds me of my own personal, facetious a little bit, theory of the way reality really is. And that theory is that what we are looking at here is a reality game run by angels. And they're up there pulling the strings, putting stuff, synchronicities, all stuff, for their enjoyment. You know, and we think it's up to us. We think it's free will. We think, hey, it's angels or whoever. It's just but it feels like that. And it's like all these things are coordinated in bizarre and interesting ways. I'll take you on a short tour through one that shows you the extensive degree to which these things are connected. There was a formation that showed up, might have been 2005. It's called the essence of, it was an intersection, doesn't matter what the name of it was, but it was more of a square, like a quilting pattern square than a circle. And we had the essence for it. And at one point we had the little blue bottles of energized water on a table at a local gathering. And this woman we didn't know came from the other side of the room. And this sort of thing happens a lot. So we just don't hardly even notice it anymore. But she came on a beeline over to our table and said, "That one, I've got to have that one." And it was this particular one that she was after. And so we got it for her and didn't think anything about it. And then a little while later, I was on my way to a Dowser's meeting, point of intersection. This was in 2009 that it came down. I was on my way to go into this quarterly Dowser's meeting, and she took me aside and said, some things have been happening in my life. I want to show you something. Excuse me. She went over to her car and pulled out of her trunk a 4-foot by 4-foot mesh in a frame that was mostly filled with little beads. And I said, what is this? And she said that she'd been getting this very strong guidance to go pull out all of her old bead jewelry and cut them all apart and put all the beads into one big bowl. And that was kind of bizarre to start with, but she was game for it, so she did that. Then she started getting this guidance to put these beads onto this big 4-foot by 4-foot section of hardware cloth, and she started doing that, and patterns started emerging on it and all that sort of thing. And then she got the guidance that it really wasn't to be done on the 4x4 structure. It was actually much smaller than that. If you looked at the 4x4 as a 3x3 matrix and look at one cell in that matrix, that's the size. So she started to make them about 4 or 5 inches on the side. And then she was told they weren't really squares, they're diamonds, and they're intended to hang from the top point. So she started doing that. And she's a Reiki master and heals people and works with people. And she started hanging them in her window where she was doing her service, and people would come in and lie down on the bed, and they'd see those things, and they'd be attracted to a particular one. And if the sun was coming in, they wanted to let the sun shine to a particular one and fall onto them, and they would find themselves invigorated and healed in ways that you really can't explain or document, but they had a really good time with it. And then in the it was about July of 2013. My wife Pamela and I were preparing to go to England to get some more energy essences, and she calls up and said, "No, we got to get together before you go. I've got something." And so we got together with her, and she had one of these little diamond patterns. And she said that she was working with it, and when she put these flannel 8 clear beads on there, 2 in each quadrant on this design, that she got a very clear message that this was to go with Pamela England because it was important for us to take it. And so we were okay. We went and we looked at it, and the color pattern of it, the corners were the color of the base chakra, the red, and it went through yellows and stuff. By the time it gets into the center, it's the color of the crown chakra. And those are the color progressions that developed out of that very first formation in 2001, the one that led to the Tesla order. We made a logo out of that and reproduced that form mathematically with these colors. So she was creating this color pattern in a very similar way. And then each of these quadrants, the formation of it was a diamond, and then north, south, east, west, there's an equilateral cross in there. That's where the colors come down. And then in the middle of the 4 quadrants, each one has 2 clear beads. And this was to go with us. So we took this with us, went to England. We met with 2 of us and 16 others to tour the formations. And that first night, we were asked to come up with a design that we might collectively manifest as a crop circle. And try to ask them for something. And we had this design, and Pamela shared it, and everybody thought, yeah, that's the one. So all 18 of us then that night meditated on this form of a diamond with an equilateral cross in it, and they could do whatever else they wanted, but we wanted that part. And so during the night, we didn't find out until a day or so later, but during the night, a formation just like that showed up. It wasn't more than 2 or 3 miles from where we were there in Oakshire County. And the night following that, two more showed up. Each one is a little different, but they all had that characteristic of the equilateral cross with the diamond in it. And so we went to the first one, which is just so clearly a mirror image of what we were asking. And when we got there, we noticed that it was inside this diamond, there was this equilateral cross, and in each of those quadrants, there were these 2 smaller circles that were in the place where the little clear beads had been put. And we counted the number of elements. We got this circle, that circle, this line, that. So there was 18 elements. There was 18 of us in the group. And coincidence, synchronicity, whatever it is. But then the next night after that. So I've got background in taught statistics at the university level for a number of years, and I saw that what this was a potential test of randomness. Like you could say, well, every crop circle that comes down is one more test case. What's the probability that you're going to get one that is equilateral diamond with a cross in it? And I surveyed all the crop circles in southern England back to year 2000 up to that time. And I found that about 1.6%, less than 2% of them, had anywhere close to an equilateral diamond with a cross in it. And so you got this event that has a probability of maybe 2%, and then you got 3 in a row. So if this is like playing cards or something, and a particular card has about a 2% probability of being drawn, and you look at the probability of having 3 in a row like that, it's like it's more probable to fully shuffle a deck and pull out all 4 aces in a row. That's more likely than what we were seeing here, which statistically meant that this was not a random event. There was something, it doesn't tell you what, but there was something that was explaining this thing. This was a pattern that was not random. So you can immediately say, well, okay, it's not whirlwinds and all kinds of other bogus thoughts. It was something. And it seemed to us that what it really was some kind of communication. Pamela was lying in that one, and she got a very clear image at one point where the phrase, this is contact, this is connection, this is communication, that phrase occurred to her. And in her mind's eye, she saw a hand coming down to help her up, and she reached for it. But there wasn't anybody there. It was interesting. So there's something interesting going on there. So we come back to the United States with this, and we start working with this essence that came from the formation that was created. It goes on beyond that, and when she left and she moved out to Southern Oregon, and before she left, she went through another one of these. I'm getting a message. We got to get together, and so we got together with her, and this time they instructed her to give us a box of what are called triscles. So these are 3-element ceramic circles that are often found in ancient cathedrals. And the message was that they belong to the Crystal Creek Center, which is where we do some of our processing and various things here. So we got that, and we put that on there. Right before she took off, she said, I got another message. There's a triangle of energy around the Crystal Creek Center, and outside that's another triangle. And it looks like this, and she sketched it out. So I got together with some of the dowsers, and we just, as a lark, said, okay, let's see if we can find this sort of thing. We did some map dowsing of the property and so on. We found 3 very high energy points in a triangle around the Crystal Creek Center. And then we did some more map dowsing, and we found a bigger triangle outside of that was maybe several miles on the side. And then on a bigger scale model map, we found another triangle outside of that one that was tens of miles on the side, at which point it became clear that this goes all the way back to what we're talking about with the grid of energy in the Earth. It's like a geodesic dome or something, and it's created out of these triangles, interconnecting lines. And so our particular place here is sitting in the middle of one of those smaller triangles. But it goes on and on like that. I mean, what do you do with it? Just one thing leads to another, and each one is as astonishing as the last one, even more, and on it goes. So wonderful things happen, and it's unpredictable too. The other thing to understand about these essences, we get one kind of question that we can't answer that comes up. People come up and they say something like, which one cures ingrown toenails? Which one's good for my lumbago? Whatever. It's not like that. That's part of old think. That's this whole idea in Western society that there's a pill for everything. Well, these are not pills. And these are energy signatures of some kind, very complex energy signatures. And as we understand it, what's going on here is that, like when this woman came across the room to say, I've got to have that one, what she was subtly reacting to, I think, was the complementarity between the energy signature in that particular essence and certain deficiencies in her own energy signature. And we don't understand these things. And we can't say, well, you need a little bit more of 34.5 megahertz in the violet tones. You know, we don't understand things in order to say anything like that. But people like her and others resonate with the kinds of energies and vibrations that are in these essences. So the reason I bring this up is that not only is it not the case that you can say which one cures the lumbago, but the same essence will have different effects for different people, because we are all so complex and we have strengths and weaknesses in various ways, and these essences will fill in somebody's valley, but it's more than another person can take, and so it's a very personal thing. And so when one person has a beautiful experience, like we're talking about here with Jack the horse and the rest of that, we cannot then take the next step and advertise it as horse dizziness medicine or something. We can't do that. The next time somebody works with it, it might be totally different. So, but we do get guidance, from the Akashic records as to the general pattern of what these particular essences are about and the kinds of things that they are going to help with. And they're not all personal medicines either. The ones that we distribute a lot to people are typically ones that have something to do with people's health, or at least their energetic health, and they a lot of people do find themselves healed in various ways, but you can never prove that the essences had anything to do with it. But there's other kinds. Another kind that we encounter a lot of is that we'll look at the reading from the Akashic records, and it'll say something like, this is Pleiadian in origin, and it is intended to reconnect and invigorate certain elements of the earth grid. This is not for human use. Well, okay. So we just don't distribute that. I mean, unless there's some idea that someone's working with earth energies and wants to have it, in which case we would look at it. But some of these are kind of earth energy inoculations from friends that are not us specifically. And once in a while, we even encounter an essence that is dangerous. And people ask, do you find any that are dangerous? Well, yeah, but you won't find them in our list of inventory of stuff that we give to anybody. Well, why would you have these things? Why do they exist? And I remember being in the crop circle fields of England sometimes, and people not knowing anything would say, "Oh boy, crop circle, come on everybody, let's go dance." And they'd go charging into this crop circle, and they get headaches and all kinds of things. Well, yeah, I mean, you're messing with stuff you don't understand. And I think that's part of the role of intuition and discernment and dowsing and these kinds of things. Find out a little bit about what you're working with before you jump into it. Some of these are so intensely energetic that we, as was mentioned, there are guidance elements that come in that say, don't take this more than twice a week. Don't take more than one drop at a time. And if that was meaningful, you wouldn't want to just go swig the bottle and see what happens, So we've got to be a little careful because we're working with things that are way beyond the human experience. We just don't know. So the whole area of dowsing is a way, and through the Akashic records, is a way to get some guidance as to what to make of these and what to do with them. And we advise everybody when they're going to be using these essences to not treat them like, it's Tuesday, I got to have essence 1309, 7 drops. It's not like that. It's like every day it's different because your own energies vary. Sometimes you're really, all these cycles and things that we talk about. I mean, those are real. And sometimes you're really, physically able and ready to go out there and beat the world. And other times you're really knocked down. And your energy signature changes a lot. So on a particular day, the particular essence or essences that might be good for you might be quite different than they were yesterday. So we ask people to assess before they use any of these on a daily basis. I mean, on any particular day, just get into a sacred space with them, feel into them, douse if that's something that you do, intuit if that's your thing, but feel into it. And when you feel an attraction to a particular one, that's the time to sit down with it. And if you're a dowser, you can ask things like, Is this a good thing to do today? Yes or no? Okay. Let's go from 0 to 10. How many drops? 3. Okay. You can do that. Should I put it on my tongue? And what we find out is that, as has been mentioned here, each one seems to have a personality. They're like distributed energy beings of some kind. They don't have any physical body, but they kind of live inside this water, and you can replicate them and send them on to other people. It's the same energy being, but in some kind of a distributed form. It's just very different than the kind of living beings that we typically encounter in our 3D reality. But you start taking some of these on a daily basis and just ask, and you get some guidance. And so we find that one particular day, one's called for, and another day it's just not at all. So if I could recommend anything to anybody, I would suggest your listeners try to develop their own dowsing skills, because that's one of the tools that you can use to make determinations. And at the website, it's more difficult to know which one you need other than to ask Lindy. I always ask Lindy, she knows. But it's hard to just look at the website, there's so many of them, and say, well, this is the one for me. But if you have some ability to do some dowsing, what you can do is start off with a list of the ones that are on the site there. And one type of dowsing that people can do is yes or no, do I need number 1? No. Yes or no, do I need number 2? No. Yes or no, number 3? Yeah. Okay. And get several, and then use dowsing to put them into priority order. Which of these 7, let's go from 0 to 7, which one is the one that I really need most today? Well, it looks like number 4. 0 to 10, how many drops? 2, okay. And what we find is that when people are working with them, they come right back to us often and they say, should I put it on my tongue? And what we typically say is that the answer is the question, that they will form these questions intuitively in your mind, and the very fact that you're asking that reflects the way that it is interacting with you. So if the idea occurs to you to put a drop on your tongue, that's probably a suggestion from it that you put a drop on your tongue. And so you just follow that and expect good things to happen, but don't expect to ever prove that any of the good things that happen to you had anything to do with these essences. You can't prove that. And if it's good for you, it's not necessarily going to be good for the next person. It's a very personal thing. So
I went on.
That's kind of a cook's tour of aspects.
I wanted to add something in terms of going on the website. When I originally had gotten there, in one of the ways that worked for me, and when I would take it to friends and just say, go through, there's a section called gallery under indexes, and it has the picture of every crop circle there. Right. And I found it effective for people, like friends, when I get together with them and I want to introduce them, to say, just go through there and see what resonates with you. And I had a friend who had breast cancer, and they didn't read any of the descriptions or the names. They just looked at the pictures, and she chose 2 of them, and it had to do with strengthening the immune system, and one addressed cancer directly. And so I thought, you know if you just look at them. So that's another possibility for people who may be interested and feel a little overwhelmed, because there's going to be certain ones that they just will pop out for them.
Yeah, that's exactly the way it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, Linda, that's a great suggestion. I wish I had known that, but I guess I needed to get them from you.
Well, that's, part of the mix that, different people come in and become part of Linda's energy may be even making them even more energetic. We don't know, because everybody is part of the puzzle, and nobody is less important or more important than anybody else. It's just such an amazing concert that we're involved in. Now, why don't you give the website is notmadebyhands.com, is that correct?
That's exactly right, notmadebyhands.com.
And they can get all the essences there.
Everything is there. It does bring up, I mean, every aspect of these essences is different from things that people are familiar with. And pricing is one thing that is quite different. And they seem to be rather expensive, but if a person thinks it's expensive, we just tell them to go to Walmart and get the cheaper one. Of course, they're not going to find it at Walmart. This is the only place on earth, where these are. This is a unique thing. So where do the prices come from? When Abigail Rose O'Grady goes into the Akashic Records, one of the things she asks is, what is the appropriate price that this should be set at? And they come right back with a number. And our response is often, well, that's kind of expensive. I expect many people to buy that. I mean, who's going to pay that much for a little bottle of water? And they say, well, this is the price that resonates most closely with the highest effectiveness of the energy signatures in that water. And if you want to have the best and fastest impact on yourself and on the world, this is the price that needs to be paid. It's an energy exchange. And you don't get anything out of something that you don't put something into. And this is what you got to put into it. And we go round and round about that. So the highest price for each one is the one that comes through the Akashic Records, and that's the price one recommends people to pay. There's two lower prices that are available too, and those are there because we understand that the intensities of these essences are way off the chart, and it's quite possible if somebody gets a very high charged energy bottle and then just drinks a whole lot of it, I mean, who knows what kinds of effects might be in the person's life, and it might not be a good thing. So if the person thinks that, well, I'm a little timid here, then they could pay the lowest price, and if they think, well, I'll try a little bit, then they could choose the middle price. And so there are ways to get into it without paying the whole thing. But the guidance through the Akashic Records did tell us on several occasions, tell the people that if they buy these essences for less than the recommended price, like if they get it for half off, you got to tell them that their benefits are only going to be half as much. You get what you pay for, and the high price is the amount that they should pay to get the full essence effects. And so I just report that. It's not like we're not doing this for money. We are doing this public service of the planet. That's why people like us are here. But we do have to cover expenses and things. And this is just the information that we were given. These are the prices that we're given. So originally when we started doing this, we were trying to think, well, maybe it's $10 a bottle and 2 for $15 as a commodity. And, no. But what is very clear that we get from time to time through these communications from whomever these people are, they have very little patience for our idea of economics. Like, that person gets to have that entire forest and cut it all down because he's got a taller stack of green papers than this person over here that thinks it's a crime. He's got more green papers, let him cut it all down, that's fine. That's our economic system. And so we have, a third of the children on Earth going to bed hungry every night, and we've got billionaires coming out of our ears. They're not amused. I mean, this is not a long-term economic structure that lasts on this planet. So when we're talking with them about things like prices and all that, they don't want to hear it. If we're saying, well, I don't have a stack of dollar bills that high, they don't want to hear it. These are the prices that work. The Earth needs this attention. The Earth needs this upgrade of energy. We're running out of time. We've got to get going on this. Have this stuff happen. Pay the price. Do the thing. It's the right thing. Just do it. it's a very insistent kind of message that we get. So I think we just have to say we'll pass it on. You know.
Well, it's we've got to have this change in our head about money. And I agree with you. I have a store, we sell the shungite, and it does, I've questioned some of their pricing to me, but again, it's the concept that if you let go of the worth of money being intrinsically worth anything, and understand that it signifies your willingness to expend a certain amount of energy. And if you give away our product to somebody, it's probably not going to be used. If you charge them $30 for the same thing you would have given them, then they think, oh my God, I better use it. I spent the $30. We have to retrain people so that they understand it's the energy. It's the energy. The more you put out, the more you're going to get back. And I think that's just part of the training. So, I've got no problem at all with people who are, pricing things as they should be, not as we would like them to be. We all would love to give it away, but that's not the game right now. In a very short period of time, it shall be, I believe, but not right now. We're running down to the last 5 minutes. Is there anything anybody just wants to, leave the audience with? Jean, you got something you want to say?
No, I just want to thank everyone for listening, and I hope that they will try the crop circle essences because, speaking from personal experience, they are, they're mind blowing. And what you were saying about, it's unfortunately we have to have value placed on things so people will, understand and be able to quantify it in their own head so they know that something is worth it and is valuable. And we have to do that by placing a dollar amount on it right now.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Linda, any other thought? Because you're the one that really started driving this. I wouldn't have met Yuroc without you, and I find him fascinating. So, you got anything else you'd like to say, darling?
No, thank you. Well, there is one point I'd like to add, and how I look at the connections that we have with these energies and with each other, and whoever ends up using these. I always like to look at a holographic flower of life, like in a 3D, so you can see one connection point to another, even though it might be miles away or universes away, there is still that connecting point. So we're all in this together as one of those points of light and one of those points of intention. And I'd just like to thank you all for being a part of it together, and whoever, I really encourage people to, if you have any interest, go to the website and look at the gallery, look at, maybe you resonate more with names, but they will definitely pop out at you if you have any interest in crop circles at all. So thank you so much for being here with all of us.
Well, to that point, it's also a quantum entanglement.
Yeah.
Everybody that gets involved with them. Can you mute your mic, please, Linda? Thank you. Everybody that gets involved with them has got that connection to them. And so we have that other connection to each other through the use of the essences themselves. So there's always that too. Yuroc, passing words?
Yeah. I find this whole thing very hopeful in a world that is full of concentration on disasters and awful things and absence of hope for the future. But I think this is very hopeful. And one aspect of that really jumped out at me was the 2012 point. Something changed, and what I'm talking about is that one of the questions that we have Angel ask when she reads these essences is, who made this? And prior to 2012, there was a fairly stable percentage. About a third of them were done by Pleiadians, according to that information. About a third done by Arcturians, and the other third were all kinds of different including Gaia, Earth energy, other things were in there. And then starting after the Mayan calendar point into 2013 and beyond, as we did the analysis pie charts and that sort of thing on who are the creators this year and who were the creators last year, we saw that there was a change. And starting after 2012, starting in 2013, 14, 15, there began to be new players. And they may not be new players, but the sense that we had was that they were skeptics. Those Earth people, they're going to blow themselves up and kill the planet. I'm going to put any time in there. Wait a minute. 2012, what was that? Oh, look. The Earth grid, it's getting, oh, wow, look at that. Hey, yeah, count us in. Here's one. Here's another one. We started getting these new players. And they were different in style. And there's a group that, according to the Akashic records, call themselves the Sun People, S-U-N, the Sun People. And given that we have all kinds of interesting things that live across the quantum edge, you could have beings living inside the sun. It doesn't matter what the temperature is because they're on the metaphysical side. But the Sun People put some in. And to call them crop circles would suggest that we just go back to the blackboard and look for new words. We often use agroglyph because they're often in the agricultural fields and they're glyphs like hieroglyphs and so on. They're messages of some kind. They're often in fields. But this particular agroglyph I'm thinking of had two very flowy, dancey kind of figures. I mean, it's just artistic beyond all belief. There wasn't a circle in the whole thing. There wasn't a straight line in the whole thing. It was just very different. And when we get another one later and it would be identified as the Sun People, we look at it, well, okay, now what we're getting into here is schools of art. You know, the Arcturian ones tend to be more angular with more straight lines, and the Pleiadian ones tend to be more flowy. And, you know, there's all kinds of things that are emerging here. And it's like we are sticking our head out of the water for the first time, and we're finding there's a whole other world out there. And we never knew there were birds. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we're learning about now that we're entering this metaphysical reality on the other side of the quantum edge. So,
okay, I need to break in here because the show is at the top of the hour, and I need to say to you, would you please hang on after we hang up because I want to talk to you about booking another show. Your information just goes on and on. I'm just hoping that people will go to notmadebyhands.com and take a look at the essences, because even just looking at the crop circles and looking at the bottles themselves, there's energy there to be gained. So, God bless you all. Gaia bless you. The spirits bless you. Be safe, everybody out there. Colleen, thank you so very much. Linda, so appreciate you. Jean, always fun. And Yuroc, I definitely want to have more conversations. You can just give so much to so many people.
Indeed.
So, okay, Colleen, it's all yours.
Well,
thank you so very much. Be safe out there.
Thank you.
Thank you for visiting. You have been listening to World Talk with Friends, a Haggy Shack radio production simulcast over the Wolf Spirit Media Network.
Colleen